Boys, welcome to another patch rundown. There's a lot of new technology that I need to talk about, so give me 10 minutes of your time and we'll get you up to date with Urgot. So, what's happening on this patch is a lot of new technology. This patch probably has the most amount of Urgot content since the season start. So what's happening? 1. There's a Korean Urgot challenger. 2. They fixed Urgot W again. And 3. Lethality is weaker because they nerfed Dirk, sadly. So let's start with the Korean Urgots. So if you haven't seen my last video, which I'll show on screen right now, there'll be a hyperlink. So what's happening with the Korean Urgot and Challenger is he's not running Flash, he's running Ghost. I do think Ghost is only available in a vacuum, a very specific vacuum. Because if you think about Urgot summoners practically, Urgot's Flash is a very good ability if you can actually use it to abuse people. However, if you can't find angles with Flash, then it's useless, right? So the main thing, a good example of when you can't use Flash effectively in laning phase is against Poppy. So Poppy is a tank, obviously. She has a slow, she has a push, etc, etc, but they're all positional based. So if you press Ghost, she can't land her Q2, she can't use her E to pin you against the wall because you have too much movement speed, you can just maneuver yourself a little bit better. She can't hit our R as easily, but you know, you can buff it. But these are all abilities you can flash, but flash is a much higher cooldown, and you can only dodge one of them. With Ghost, maybe you can get yourself out of the Q2, sidestep the E so she doesn't push you on the turret, and you can sidestep the ult. So Ghost opens up 3 opportunities to dodge 3 abilities, when Flash can only guarantee you dodge 1. So, in my opinion, Ghost is a very egoistic summoner to run. It implies as a default that you know more about Urgot than your laner knows about Urgot. Because at the end of the day, Urgot is one of the biggest knowledge check champions. People don't lose to mechanics. People lose to knowledge against Urgot. So it's a very egoistic, experimental playstyle. Please take that with a pinch of salt. I do think Ghost is good on Urgot in certain areas. I probably personally won't be running it myself because I'm a Flash addict, but do keep in mind, the Korean Urgot is using Ghost and Teleport together. I would run probably the same. I think if you're sacrificing a summoner, it probably has to be Flash. Teleport is way too valuable in the current meta because of how important rotating around the map is. So it comes down to preference. You can run Flash Ghost, Ghost Teleport, Flash Ignite. It doesn't matter to me. It's just something you should keep in mind and experiment with. If you like Ghost, Ghost is very broken right now. Try using Ghost. Oh, also, before we move on from the Korean Urgot, he's a psycho. He runs under the sky, don't know why. Moving on. So, moving on to MURAMANA. What they've done with MURAMANA and Urgot's W in general is they fixed it. But what did they fix? They just made Urgot W correctly apply as a spell. So now, every tick of Urgot W is going to apply Tier. Every tick of Urgot W is going to apply SHOJIN. Every tick of Urgot W is going to apply Rylai's if you're psychotic. So this is just a very nice quality of life update to Urgot when he's already strong. Urgot is eating too good this season, IMO. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw nerfs on the horizon eventually. In my opinion, they need to nerf Fleet before they nerf Urgot because Fleet is the thing making him really consistent. Just a very good rune in general. But if you see nerfs coming, don't be surprised. So, MURAMANA build some Tier, obviously. You don't want to start Tier, you want to go D-Blade into Tier on the cheat recall instead of Cole. This is the tricky part. I don't think MURAMANA is good. I want to make this perfectly clear. I think MURAMANA is at highest B Tier, and probably realistically around C Tier. The problem with MURAMANA is it doesn't give you any sustainability or combat prowess. It gives you AD, mana, and I believe ability haste. Rad will be showing it on screen anyway. Rat, say hi! Put a little wave emoji. Yeah, the problem with MURAMANA, it doesn't give you in-combat prowess. It gives you a lot of damage, but Urgot doesn't struggle with damage. Urgot is one of the highest CPS characters in the game. So, emphasizing on DPS on Urgot is fine if it gives you some sustainability, which is why Black Cleaver is so good, right? Black Cleaver emphasizes on DPS per second, gives you movement speed, and it gives you health, right? PC will always be the perfect Urgot item. MURAMANA, niche of meta AD carry? I don't know. I think I'll give a fair rating for MURAMANA at C. So what you want to do with MURAMANA is, as I said, you start Doran's, Cheetah Recall Tier, then you go Black Cleaver, and then after that MURAMANA, and then you use Sterak's Jack Show full tank it. Because MURAMANA does do a lot of damage. It is, like, consistently one of the most, like, strong items in the game. Like, you'll see Varus build it, you'll see Kai'Sa build it, etc, etc. If you're a champion who can pilot MURAMANA, it's fine. But the problem is, Urgot usually would just die. before you get any real use from it. So, I don't know. C tier. Now, speaking of Shojin in the previous little round, Shojin, I do believe, will actually be viable, if not meta. So, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to give it an S ranking, not Z tier like BC and Hullbreaker. I think Shojin has a place in Urgots on the 3rd or 4th item slot. So what you want to do with Shojin is you want to build Black Cleaver, Sterax, Shojin. Or Hullbreaker, Black Cleaver, Sterax, Shojin. Shojin is... The difference between Shojin and Muramana is Shojin actually gives you HP and combat prowess, right? So you're going to get up to 12% damage per leg, per ability, etc, etc. The only thing Shojin doesn't amplify on Urgot will be his W. So it will proc from W, but so, you know, you'll stack it immediately because Urgot shoots very quickly. You'll stack up the passive in about 1.5 seconds. You're now doing 12% bonus damage. That bonus damage is on your Q, your E, R, passive, and etc, etc. It's not on your auto attacks, but 12% damage amp immediately against any champion. I don't need to tell you how effective that is because, you know, think PTA. I believe PTA is a 9% damage exposure for everybody. Shojin is a 12% just damage increase. Like, that's it. That's just how Shojin works. So, if you haven't read Shojin, that's pretty much what it does. If you hit that champion 3 times with W, Shojin will then do 12% bonus damage to them. Done. So, yeah, Shojin, S or Z, not sure yet. Build it on the 3rd or 4th item. Don't think it's good enough on 2nd, because there's no way Shojin is ever better than Black Cleaver or Sterax. So, you just need to slot it in, best in slot. Moving on to the better items. Here are the current best builds and the experimental build paths on screen for you. This cheat sheet will be available on Twitter. It will be linked in the replies. So, best build, Black Cleaver, Sterax, Jack Show, and then situational tank items. This will always be the definitive best build path until they drastically change anything. It's quite boring, but boring is always good, unfortunately. That's just the truth of video games in general. Like, StarCraft meta is always very boring. League meta is just as here. It's just what it is. It's not the most exhilarating, but it's the most consistent and the best. You should also be running Fleet with this build, because Fleet is just the best, but Fleet is also the most boring. One thing to note, if you're running this build, you should be running TP. But here's the variant that's more fun. Hullbreaker. So Hullbreaker is less consistent than BC. Purely out of virtue, because the enemy team needs to make really big mistakes, or you need to be such a better player than your laner to get value from it as the default. So the problem with Black Cleaver, and the problem with Hullbreaker and why Black Cleaver is so much better than it, is because as a default, Black Cleaver can't be piloted wrong. Hullbreaker requires good mechanics, which you need to be toggling well. It also needs your enemy laner to have either bad macro or bad mechanics, so you can exploit them. And then you sell Hullbreaker late game anyway, because Hullbreaker isn't as valuable later in the game. So, if you're going Hullbreaker, you need to rush Hullbreaker, don't buy boots, don't buy coal, you need to just go straight into Hullbreaker and hit the turrets before platings drop, because that's where the real value in Hullbreaker is. Later into the game, on the 5th slot, you can just replace Hullbreaker with a different item, Dead Man's, Force of Nature, etc, etc. So the best build path with Hullbreaker is Hullbreaker, BC, Sterax, Jack Show, and then situational items. It's the same as the best build path, you're just slotting in Hullbreaker. With Hullbreaker, I do recommend PTA and Ignite, because obviously Hullbreaker wants to play for solo play individual, but you can run TP and Fleet if that's your playstyle. Me, personally, I run PTA and Ignite because I like aggression. Again, the rune page is on the bottom right of the screen right now, so you kind of know what to run. All they do is change the main rune with the sub rune. There is an experimental playstyle you can do, well, experimental, my favorite playstyle you can do, which is running free boots, which cooldown reduces if you kill champions, and Cosmic Insight for more flashes and more ignites. One thing about this build, ignite on cooldown, pretty much. If you have summoners up, you want to be using them. Obviously, that's how you get value from the Cosmic Insight. Try and abuse timers, because your flash will be up 30 seconds, 40 seconds before theirs. Use this window to try and catch kills, and that's how this rune page works. So for the experimental build paths, we'll put on the cheat sheet for you here. Muramana. So as I talked about Muramana at the start of the video, maybe you didn't see it. You skip through to get the best builds. These are the experimental build paths you want to do on this patch. Muramana is, you're going to start BC, then go Muramana, then go Sterax, Jack Show, and again, follow the same core of the best build paths. Shojin, again, I think is a very good item. I think Shojin will be a meta staple, maybe. I need to get a real feel for the item, but I do believe Shojin is a good item. Shojin, you want to go Black Cleaver, Sterax, Shojin, Jack Show, fill out the rest of the build with situational items. The faculty is sadly nerfed because they're nerfing Serrated Dirk for whatever reason. I really don't like that they're nerfing Serrated Dirk. I think early aggression should always be rewarded because you're taking risks to make a good play. I hate defensive playstyles, so nerfing Serrated Dirk really hurts. But there's still, like, you know, the F-buts and whens. So if you're a player who does really well from ahead, you want to go into Black Cleaver first, Profane Hydra second, and then your items you're looking to build after that are like Edge of Night, and stuff like that, right? Opportunity, it's good. Youmuu's is eh. Ever since they added the ranged nerf onto it, probably B tier, realistically speaking. I wouldn't recommend Youmuu's that much. Edge of Night is really good. Opportunity is good. Not Z tier, S tier, but you know, it's still good items. Profane Hydra is really slept on in Urgot IMO. I think if you are ahead and you want to keep pushing a lead, Profane second, you would just one-shot everybody. But the problem with any Hydra item in general is it doesn't give you anything, right? The problem with Titanic Hydra, and the problem with like any Hydra, is it just amplifies Urgot's identity and like what it already is. So when you build Profane Hydra, you're making yourself much more vulnerable to taking damage, right? So if there's a champion on the team like Orianna, who understands, oh, I can just stay out of his range and take no damage, then I'm going to lose, right? Or she's going to win. You know what I'm saying. Profane Hydra is countered by enemy team having a brain. But if they have no brain, and you can exploit it harder than you would with Sterex and second item or Jack Show. So that's the best lethality build. So here's the matchup guide. Fiora is nerfed, so she's going to get a little bit easier, but everything pretty much stays the same. You know how it goes. But if you have any comments, any questions for any matchups, just let me know in the comments. I will do my best to get to you. I might not get to everybody, because, you know, maybe I'm just tired, I see you comment at a bad time. But I will go out of my way to give you information if I can. So any matchup you're struggling with, just let me know in the comments. Oh, sevens, and I'll see you later. Goodbye. I'm Markiplier.